If there is one thing all should know about those with great power, it's that those with great power desire to be alone at the pinnacle. But the question is the world of Jujutsu different? Can those with great power and great ambition stand together? Or will they tear each other down? What's up, guys? Alfonso here, and here we are to do a discussion on whether or not Sukuna Ryomen, the king of curses, can coexist with Kenjaku, the curse of over 2,000 years. And why I think maybe, but most likely not, but if they do, it could be interesting. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into the discussion itself. What's up, guys? Alfonso here. Fun fact, I have it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact is, Sukuna and Kenjaku have a really weird relationship. And not in that way, that's Uraume and Sukuna, but specifically Kenjaku and Sukuna seem oddly accepting of the other's existence, if you know what I'm saying. And I say it feels weird because of the nature of both of these characters and how their goals don't necessarily collide, yet don't necessarily overlap, if you know what I'm talking about. But let's actually get into it, and why I think this dichotomy in the relationship between these two is so strangely interesting yet concerning for the future of Jujutsu Kaisen, and whether or not these two can actually coexist. So remember, at least Sukuna's stated goal is to just exist. Like, Bro just kind of just wants to be. Like, here I am, therefore I am, kind of mentality. Sukuna, at least from my understanding of the character, don't get me wrong, I have misinterpreted characters in JJK before, so feel free to correct me, but at least from my understanding, Sukuna's main objective is to simply live his life the way he wants to, without regard for others, without regard for the world, without the regard for progression, regression, anything of the sort, as he very recently explained and implied within 238. The pursuit of his strength is not for any lofty moral value or anything like that. If he does not like something, he will execute it. If he finds something appreciable, he'll throw it a bone, and anything else in between. That's what his view of the strongest should be. Not worrying about things like connection or love or anything of the sort, but he is more than willing to give it to other people. But this inherent nature of Sukuna suggests something strange, and it's ultimately the idea of stagnation. Sukuna kind of doesn't want anything to truly change. Don't get me wrong, he greatly appreciated the fact that he could have someone like Satoru Gojo who could push him in one way, shape, or form, but clearly he didn't spare Satoru. He didn't want to keep him around. He was just like, okay, you did a good job. I'll remember you forever. Bye. And let him perish. And same thing for someone like Hajime Kashimo, who admittedly pressed him much less, but still another person he simply struck down. Sukuna does not seem very interested in fostering a new generation, evolving cursed energy in any way, shape, or form. He seems like he's believed he's reached the pinnacle and kind of just wants to sit there. Don't get me wrong, that is a logical idea, especially considering within the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, for the past 1,000 years, it seems like nothing has been born that's stronger than Sukuna himself, and thusly he just exists up there. No point in looking down, no point in looking forward, no point in even looking backwards. As long as Sukuna was there, unless he's asked about it, he most likely will not care about what anything has to do with the future, past, or anything of the sort. This stands, ironically enough, in direct opposition to Kenjaku, someone who's been around for an extremely long time, arguably more ancient than even Sukuna himself, due to one of the Killing Games players' implications. The war that Druve is referenced to be a part of is from like 2,000 years ago, like around year 0. Meanwhile, Sukuna is dated back to the Heian period, which is specifically 1,000 years ago. Now, don't get me wrong, we do not know how far back Sukuna actually existed in. Sure, maybe he was his most prominent in the Heian period, but maybe he dates back before that. But I don't think there's anything to suggest that he dates back literal thousands of years, like Kenjaku does. And ultimately, Kenjaku's ultimate desire, at least from what we've been told by the character, and don't get me wrong, I do not if I were to trust Kenjaku at his word, I would end up like Jogo. And we all know what happened to Jogo. But with that being the case, Kenjaku has at least told us that he is very much interested in the merger. And what does the merger do? It's supposed to be something that's going to allow the how do I say that word? Transcendental? Transcension? The ascension of a power beyond cursed energy. The man has been steeped in the system for literally over 1,000 years, if not 2,000 years, if Druve is any indication, and thusly he's pretty much seen it all. He's lived through it all. Presumably, let's say his body's lasted about, what's the average lifespan? Let's be generous and let's just make it simple. Let's say all of his bodies lasted about 1,000 years. That's a lie. 100 years. Even though that's literally not the case, we see him hop bodies rather frequently. Let's say it lasts 100 years each. He's lived through 20 separate lifetimes at a low ball. Realistically, he's lived through at least, most likely, probably in the 50s, being completely generous, and thusly he's seen everything, literally everything the world has to offer, whether that be from curses, whether that be from sorcerers, whether that be from somewhere in between. He has been stopped before, don't get us wrong. He is someone who is lost to the Six Eyes seemingly at every point. 2 points in time previously that are hard confirmed, one in which he slaughtered a Six Eyes user, yet another one just showed up on the day of the merger. Same thing with the Star Plasma Vessel. Bro has been hampered before, but notably every single time the goal was the merger. It was to transcend cursed energy. It was to take it to that next step. Kenjaku ultimately is a scientist, someone who wants to see what the world has to offer through using what the world already has. And what he plans to do that with is with Tengen and the merger and the culling games. But once again, you have the issue here. Kenjaku is all about progression, evolution. Every single one of his experiments are based on that. Look at the whole situation with Choso and his brothers. They were very specifically a step to try and breach past the wall of cursed energy, cursed spirits, and humans. But unfortunately, according to Kenjaku, they failed horribly. And seemingly enough, despite directly witnessing Sukuna, despite directly understanding the massive breadth of his power to the point where he relies on him as a living, breathing shield and spear against the threat of the Six Eyes that was Satoru Gojo, he wasn't satisfied. He wasn't satisfied at all. That's one of the most interesting things. Sukuna is perfection. It's stated in chapter 238. The heft of glaze the narrator gave Sukuna as simply sorcery incarnate is unending, immaculate, insane, if you will. And it leaves room for questioning. If Sukuna really is the peak of Jujutsu, 2 mouths, 4 eyes, 4 arms, the ability to chant and speak, the ability to strike and weave hand signs, the ability to do all that with a deformed body that is unencumbered by the nature of traditional biology, yet is not limited to the weakness of RCT or the weakness of exorcism, such as cursed spirits usually have, what else is Kenjaku looking for? Why isn't Sukuna what he was all happy about? Why is it 1,000 years after Sukuna existed, Kenjaku seems to give him relatively little reverence or anything like that? Notably, it seems like the whole scenario with Choso and his family was an attempt to make something similar to Sukuna. Remember, Sukuna is not necessarily a curse. He is referenced as a curse on and off, but he's not actually a cursed spirit. What he is an evolved human being, a sorcerer that transcended the nature of humanity in order to become something more akin to a cursed spirit, but with the benefits of humanity, or vice versa. But that still wasn't enough. Choso and his brother still wasn't enough. Anything that Kenjaku could have achieved in maybe those 2,000 or even more years of living was not enough. He wants to go further. He wants to go farther. He wants to transcend. But the issue is that transcendence and stagnation are in exact opposition. One cannot progress by staying in the same place. It's literally impossible. Have you ever tried moving forward while standing still? Technically, it will work because, like, the planet's moving and, like, stars expanding, like universal expansion stuff. But specifically, your direct place within your home or your workspace or any place you happen to be in, you will not be able to move forward unless you progress. But If you find yourself dealing with something that does not want to progress, something that sits at the pinnacle, something that acts as an act of pure stagnation, what do you have to do? You're going to have to trample over that. But vice versa. Say you are in a very comfortable position in life. Say your life is better than it's ever been. Say this is the life you want to live out for the rest of your days. Like Sukuna said, until death takes him. What does that mean? Does that mean ultimately you're not going to let any progress happen? Does that mean you stand in opposition to anyone who's so focused on progress? Do you stand in opposition to any individual who could hypothetically usurp your position at the pinnacle of creation? But of course, creation and the pinnacle of that is specifically in reference to Sukuna. On an individual level, what would you do if someone were to try and ruin what would you view as a perfect life? A life you've been seeking, a life you worked for, even a life that was just given to you. Would you stand idly by, or would you attempt to interfere with the person who's attempting to take all that away? That's the real question on the interesting dynamic between Sukuna and Kenjaku. Notably, it does appear that Kenjaku has some variation of leverage over Sukuna. Remember, Sukuna was more than willing to fight Satoru without the extra 5 fingers. He was about to throw down in chapter 221. Immediately, however, Kenjaku shows up and says, "Hey, Sukuna, remember, you have something you need to do for me." And Sukuna acquiesces. Presumably this is some sort of binding vow, or else I don't think Sukuna would listen to anybody, because he's literally Sukuna. But with that being the case, what leverage? Obviously, I would assume this leverage comes from Kenjaku teaching Sukuna how to divide his soul and imbue it into cursed objects, which ended up being Sukuna's fingers. But now that that goal is achieved, what is the binding vow that Kenjaku set up with Sukuna? Remember, these beings stand in direct opposition to each other. But at the same time, it's entirely possible that they don't, which is strange. Notably, Sukuna has made no moves to leave the battlefield. He could easily right now. There's nothing that keeps him there. He could go off and recover, especially if you go with the common idea that only his physical form was restored and not his cursed energy reserves. He's in a very vulnerable state. This is something that Kenjaku even highlights right before the battle begins, and he waves his fingers and disappears off into the ether for the passive volume or so. So with that being the case, what's the dealio? Is Sukuna worried about what Kenjaku's doing, considering what Kenjaku's doing could create something that's even stronger than him? Is Kenjaku worried that the moment that Sukuna is allowed to roam free and hypothetically completes whatever deal that they have, whatever binding vow was instated over 1,000 years ago, then Sukuna has free reign to simply execute him or not? That's the thing. That's why I say the question of their coexistence is so interesting. Because theoretically, based on what each of them represents, stagnation and progression, they are opposed fundamentally. But at the same time, Sukuna already acknowledges the idea that, in the end, he is not immortal. He is not timeless. He is something that will fall like everything else. He acknowledges this as recently as chapter 238, and he seemingly acknowledged it 1,000 years ago when he needed to split his soul in the first place. And at the same time, Kenjaku is not one to completely be in disregard for stagnation, though admittedly he is heavily in favor of progression. You can see this by how he consistently stomps over everybody who kind of wants to progress in their own unique ways, but he says, no, we're going to progress my way. And it's been that same kind of progress they've been trying to make for likely over 1,000 years. So thusly, these pinnacles of stagnation and progression are not fundamentally opposed. They could coexist, but would they want to? Would Sukuna want Kenjaku running around? And would Kenjaku want Sukuna running around? I don't 100% know. That's why this dynamic is so fundamentally interesting to me. JJK is founded on a lot of mystery. Don't get me wrong. The fact that I can barely comprehend the direction the series is going right now is a testament to how good Gege is at waving his wonderful little fingers and just saying, and then I have to go, because I don't know. But at the same time, these two are major antagonists. More major than Mahiso ever was. More major than any of the disaster curses. More major than any Culling Games participant. And while they seem aligned now, At any moment, conflict could arise between the two because of what they inherently represent. But the question of whether or not these two will collide leads into an interesting conundrum. If either turns on each other, can the other succeed? Notably, Kenjaku is much weaker than Sukuna. I don't think that's a hot take to make. I don't think there's any universe, or even me, who believes Kenjaku will be the final villain, believes that Sukuna wouldn't be able to one-tap, bro. If Kenjaku is shaking and shuddering in his boots at the thought of Satoru Gojo wiggling his fingers at him, I can't imagine what the man who surpassed Satoru Gojo would do to Kenjaku if he ever tried to engage him in a direct fight. But at the same time, Kenjaku obviously has more knowledge than Sukuna. It's likely he has more knowledge of Sukuna. It's obvious that there are still many unknown factors in their dynamic, in their bond. So, what does that mean? I don't know. But I do believe that if either of them were to turn on each other, it could actually end up being a net positive. The dynamism of their relationship, despite how little of it we get to see, is one of the most crucial things in keeping our cast with a winning slot. Hypothetically, if Sukuna and Kenjaku were to actually 100% align with each other, whether that be Sukuna supporting the merger entirely, or Kenjaku simply agreeing to work under Sukuna for the rest of his days, like a sort of... That's a spoiler for Magi, so I won't say it. But there are certain dynamics. Essentially, a royal vizier for Sukuna as the king, then the heroes would lose. The heroes would lose. Notably, there's still a high possibility of the heroes losing even if these two do fight each other. But the heroes would lose if these two were to ever connect. But the fact that these two seem to stand in opposition to each other allows for this strange loophole. This strange zone where hypothetically positivity could ring from their conflicts due to the fact that they are the only two that are established in the current series that could genuinely oppose each other. Whether that be Kenjaku utilizing all the cursed energy he's gathered to properly complete the merger regardless of Sukuna's living or perishing, or whether that be through Sukuna's simply overwhelming power that trumps even Kenjaku, a man who's likely over twice Sukuna's age. That's the interesting thing. There is no clear path forward. There is no clear understanding, and there is a wide open path for Gege to walk. So, what do you guys think? What do you think the dynamic between Sukuna and Kenjaku is? Do you think their dynamics of progression and stagnation and the fundamental aspects of those characters will end up clashing? Or do you think they will align, or if anything, walk as parallel lines and leave the other alone? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that little notification bell so you not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, leave Sukujaku in the comment section down below. Thank you so... Why'd that happen? Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is, in fact, that guy with a pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakanda Plays, Red Wolf 4765, and Burp Skills. I'd like to give another very big thank you to our $5 patrons, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, and Demex LND. And I'd like to give a fat, hefty thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, and Idemokami. And I'd like to give another hefty, dafty thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. And another big fat scrumdiddlyumptious thank you to our $25 patrons, Igneal and Calvin Elder.